All right. Peace and greetings, YouTubers. Ahmaud Arbery. I'll be honest, I have a lot that I would like to say, so I'm just going to talk until I get tired of talking or until I think I've made my point well enough. Even though in reality, when you make any kind of video that addresses racism in America, once the racist demographic finds the video, it doesn't matter what you say. They're going to find everything to dissect and dig apart in the comments section. You could say 1 + 1 is 2, but because a black person is giving a message, they got a problem with it. And they're going to say, you should have said 2.0 with the 0 repeating. You freaking idiot. What's wrong with you? So sometimes there's not even a point. But going back to the main topic here, when it comes to Ahmaud Arbery, I think there's two elements of emotion that come into play, at least for me, and it's rage and it's hurt. And it's one of the reasons why I didn't jump into making a video right away when the story came out. But there's a rage and there's a hurt that ensues. And I think they're both rooted in the same origins. And those origins consist of the fact that we recognize that the judicial system is not going to give justice to his family, most likely. You know, even if the father and son who finally have been charged, even if they are convicted, the fact that we have to pray that the sentence will be reasonable. The fact that you have to literally just cross your fingers and hope. It just pretty much shows that the system is not built the same depending on who you are and where you come from and how you look. You know, it's kind of like the Botham Jean situation where you have a woman break into a black man's house and shoot him for sitting on his couch and she gets 10 years and a Bible and a hug and make sure her hair gets aligned. And most likely, she'll probably be out in 5 years anyway. And I'm surprised they didn't let her out now because of COVID-19. They'll find a way to let a lot of people out because you're seeing a lot of people who have done heinous and horrendous things get out right now because of the virus, but another conversation. So that's one element of the rage and the hurt. The other bit is that there's a connectivity to each victim. Every single time you see, or at least for me, every single time I see a name or I see a story or I hear about an individual, whether it's Aiyana Jones, whether it's Sandra Bland, whether it's Eric Garner or Mike Brown or Terrence Crutcher or Philando Castile, like it doesn't matter who it is, or even Michael Donald, who I'm going to talk about a little bit later, there's a connection to those individuals, even if I don't know them, but I recognize the fact that their killings are not isolated incidents and they're a part of a larger system and a larger pattern that's deeply rooted within the constructs of America, and recognizing that, you know, there's a message behind those killings. So that's another hurt that exists. And so and rage as well. And so it's just like, man. And then the worst kind of hurt is knowing that you already know how white America is going to respond collectively. And before we go any further, because there's going to be white people who watch this video and get in their feelings and, well, not me, it's not me, you shouldn't blanket statement all of us. Listen, clearly as an individual, you don't have enough power to change what your group is doing. So until you and all of the great ones get together and try to make and advocate for change, don't come on my comment section telling me how to be pissed off. Fall back. All right. You should be more mad at the fact that somebody's dead, not mad at the fact that I'm calling out the racism. Get your stuff together. Anyway, but yeah, I think that's one of the more enraging parts, knowing how white America will operate, where literally you see the same pattern every single time. The story initially drops about the offense that's taking place to whatever the person is, whether it's Tamir Rice, whether it's Trayvon Martin, anybody, Jordan Davis, doesn't matter who it is, the story comes out. And there's two reactions. Much of black America already knows it's something fishy in the water, something ain't right, what's going on, and boom, let's have that conversation. Here's the outrage. How come somebody hasn't been charged? On the other side, a lot of people in white America, they will always find a justifiable reason for why that incident happened, because in this country, white people always have presumed innocence in everything. Black people do not have that luxury. Black people are guilty from the time that they come out of the womb. You see that even with the schools and the daycares. This is why you see such a high suspension rate with young black youth in schools, specifically in schools that have predominantly white staffs. You see that even when it comes to putting black children in special education and remedial learning courses and everything else like that, a lot of the times it has nothing to do with what that child has actually done, but more so how the instructor interprets how they see that black child. And so you see it with that, you see it with any kind of major tragedy that happens to black people. It's always, well, they brought it on themselves. There was something they did wrong. And like I said before in another video, you know, everything is on black people until black people get successful. Then that same collective wants to come in and take credit. Well, if it wasn't for what we did, you wouldn't have been here. You wouldn't have been there. If it wasn't because we did this, that's literally how America operates. So when it comes to a standard of what's fair for black people, it moves. No matter however we try to get to it, it's gonna move. White people get to, you know, white collective, they get to do whatever they want. The rules they shift. Prime example. As you look at the details of the case, he's jogging in his neighborhood. He's approached by the father and the son. The father and the son claim that there were burglaries in the neighborhood. They felt he fit the description, which is already strike one for me. Like, first of all, that's a very stupid assessment because, one, I went back and I tried to do my little research on my own. There were no burglaries in that area because the crime happened, or the murder happened in February, the end of February. The last reported break-in was on January 1st, a whole 7 weeks before Ahmaud ended up being killed. And in reality, it wasn't a home invasion. It wasn't a home burglary. It was a gun that was reported missing out of a car. And if we want to talk about the demographics of who has the most guns in this country, it's not black folks. So you might want to check some of the white folks in your neighborhood who might have just decided to take it because they need it. Or it might have been some random teenagers who just wanted to have a good time. So you might want to check your neighbors. But literally, that was the argument that was pushed there. And then they go and they pursue this individual who's running in his own neighborhood. And because he did not want to acknowledge them and he went the other way once he realized what was kind of taking place, they felt that they had the authority to try to make a citizen's arrest or, pretty much pin him down or hold him until somebody else comes. And fast forward, now he's dead. And so people tried to make the justification and say, oh, well, why didn't he comply? Why didn't he listen? And again, it's like y'all didn't have that same energy last week when all y'all were taking guns and everything to the state capitals because you wanted to go to the hair salon and you wanted to go to the spa. Now all of a sudden it's back to why didn't you comply? And secondly, no random white man in a truck with his son has any authoritative anything over me, period. And so I think that even ties back to the case of Michael Donald, which I wanted to address, because a lot of people kept saying, well, why didn't he stop? Why didn't he listen? It's like, maybe you don't remember what happened to Michael Donald in Alabama back in the 80s. I think it was 1980 or 1981. He was in Alabama going for a walk, right? He just came from the store, bought cigarettes from his sister. Around the same time period in that town, there was a white police officer who was killed. The black individual who was charged was not convicted at the time. There was a hung jury. The jury just couldn't really find a reason to convict him. They felt that there was not enough evidence. And so the regional section of the Klan at the time said, well, if black people can go and shoot and kill white people, we should be able to do the same. And so 3 or 4 of them got in the truck and they just went looking for any black person to kill. And what did they do? They took advantage of Michael Donald's charisma and generosity. They asked him for directions on how to get to like a bar or to a lounge. And of course, especially when you go to the South, black people are very hospitable. I'll always remember this time we were driving to Utica, Mississippi to visit some family we had never seen before, or at least I had never seen. It was somebody my dad had grew up with years ago. And this is before the days of GPS and MapQuest and, you just have it on your phone. You can call Siri. No, these are the days where you had the big old map and you had to study that map and write everything down before you got on the road. And so we got stuck somewhere and my dad had asked directions for how to get to somebody's house. I don't remember. And so the person we asked did not know. But this other older black woman all the way on the other side of the street, I don't know how she heard this conversation. The way that she ran over to say, oh no, baby, you got to go to this thing. And it's going to be a white winding sign over on the right next to the church. And I mean, she couldn't wait to give us the directions. So again, going back to Michael Donald, him being a gentleman saying, oh, okay, yeah, I can tell you how to get to that. And instead, as he approached the truck to try to give them the instructions, because he was just kind of trying to be somebody who saw the good in everybody, they pretty much snatch him up, put him in the truck, drive him to a different county, and they kill him. They beat him down with a tree log and a tree stump. They even slit his throat 3 different times to make sure that he wasn't alive when it was all said and done. And so that's the reality of black in America. And so when people open their mouth to try to say, well, why didn't he just comply? He doesn't have to comply, first of all, because who are you? That goes back to the fact that many people in America, specifically white Americans, think that they are the authoritative figures in everything. And that when it's all said and done, whatever lens they see the world through is how the world is supposed to operate. And anything that challenges that is unethical. It must be guilty. Must not be innocent. And that's literally the approach you're seeing to Ahmaud Arbery. One of the funniest bits that I saw, and I noticed this after she hosts the show on The Real. I can't think of her name. I think it's Amanda Seales. She made a post about some of the white celebrities who have made posts in support of Ahmaud Arbery, but turned the comment section off on their pages because they recognize that even the fan demographics of the people who support their music or their art, they recognize that there's an element of racism in that collective and that white people are going to lose their minds. You saw it happen with LeBron James and a lot of his teammates when they started wearing the jerseys in support of police brutality or challenging police brutality. You saw all the outrage and how dare you, blah, 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 blah. All right. I saw Taylor Swift made a post and one of the first comments was like, oh my God, what are you doing? You're going to make us lose we're not going to be #1 with the next album. You already lost the Republican fans. I'm like, y'all are just complacent with this stuff, right? Absolutely crazy. And so seeing the reaction and the response of white America is another thing that's just so enraging because I feel like you have 3 different kinds of white Americans when it comes to any kind of racist tragedy that happens in this country. You do have the collective of white Americans who get it. They recognize that there's a problem. They will even fight with you. They will picket. They will march. They'll do that. It's not a large size, but it's enough of them to have a sample size. So there's that group. Then there's what I call the worst of them, person A. And then we'll get to who I call the hilltop group. So person A is this. I'm going to give a little scenario, so stick with me. Let's pretend that there are 2 yards, yard A and yard B. And in between the 2 yards is an 8-foot wall that separates the yard. All right, it's a brick wall, let's say that. So Yard A is going to represent white Americans who like to build up a wall when it comes to being challenged with any conversation about racism and accountability. There's a wall that they build that they will not look over. They're like, they recognize what's happening on the other side, but they're just going to pretend that they're naive. And so no ifs, ands, or buts. They don't want to have the conversation. It will disrupt how comfortable they are. So that's the people on Section A or Yard A. Yard B is Black America. So here's the scenario. The people in Yard A, they want to have a pit fire. You know, it's the summer. It's a good day. The sun's starting to set. They start a pit fire. You know, they're having a good time. They got the hard cider. They got the music playing. You know, Sweet Caroline is playing. Good time, right? And so, I don't know, one of the embers or ashes or some kind of burning debris flies up from that pit fire and flies over into the other yard. I was going to say somebody had a cigarette and threw it over, but I knew some idiot would come in the comment section and say, no cigarette butt is going to jump 8 feet. So I'm ahead of you. I'm already ahead of the game. And so let's just say that there's some kind of debris from that fire that lands over into the other yard, right? It lands into Yard B, which represents Black America, and it starts a fire. The grass is dry because this is Lancaster, California in August. There hasn't been any rain. Nobody's been able to water the yards because there's a water sanction because of the drought and everything else like that. So the yard catches fire and it burns all of the dead plants in the garden, the shrubbery. You know, if there's a dog in the backyard, the dog's losing their mind because the dog can't go anywhere. If there's a deck, it's caught onto the deck. It might even catch onto the house. Everything on the other side is burning. And so here's where we call what I like to call that wall that they don't want to look over, or AKA privilege. All right. Everybody on Yard A, they're chilling. They're going to act like they don't notice what's happening on the other side. But the problem is an 8-foot wall can't disguise a huge fire on the other side, no matter how much you try. So what ends up happening is all of the ash and the smoke from Yard B start to blow over into Yard A, right? And what that symbolizes is the outrage. That symbolizes the public outcry. That symbolizes the calls for accountability. That symbolizes the calls for justice. That symbolizes the calls for reform and for change and for new laws to be made and for new articles and amendments and ordinances and acts of trying to make better for different groups of people. That's what all that represents. That also represents calling people out and saying, hey, this is what you and your folks are doing. Are you going to do anything about it? And so for the people on Yard A who were having a good time and they had the pit fire and the music playing and everything, now they're annoyed because smoke is landing in the yard, ash is landing, they're feeling inconvenienced, and all of a sudden the verbiage turns into, oh my goodness, why can't they just put the fire out? Why didn't they water the grass? The grass should have been watered. You knew it was hot outside. Because of course, when we talk about laws, certain groups of people get to do what they want. Again, like we said, them same people that will go and take guns to the state capitol because they want to go to the salon, most likely those same people in Yard A would have watered the grass even if the state said, please do not water the grass right now. We need to save water so people don't starve and people have enough water to bathe and that the water can still make sure electricity stays on. They probably watered their yard anyway. Grass is lush, green, you know what I mean? Even the gophers don't want to dig it up. They don't want to mess up the yard because it looks so nice. But anyway, going back, so the arguments, why didn't they cut down that shrubbery if it was already dead? Why didn't they? The whole conversation turns into what Yard B didn't do. So there will be no accountability for the fact that that burning ember or whatever piece of debris flew from Yard A over and landed into Yard B. There will be no accountability on that. And then when the challenge is made to the people from Yard B to the people in Yard A about this is what you have done, what are you going to do about it? Or do you not see that we need help over here? You're inconveniencing us. We were trying to have our pit fire. Ash got into my hard cider. Now I have to throw the whole thing away. God, I'm going to be wasting glass. This is the reason why the planet is dying. Good. You guys just do the most. Everything doesn't have to be about fires. Gosh, all you people see is smoke. All you see is smoke and flames and ash and death and destruction. And so that's literally the response. And then the funniest bit, even after all of that, let's say it's the next day, right? The people from House B or Yard B, let's say the house didn't burn down. Maybe it just burned the deck and some of the house got burned up a little bit. They already have the contractors in the backyard trying to fix up stuff. What happens? People on Section A or Side A, they call the police. Noise violation. I don't know who is doing what out there, but they have some large crane in the backyard and some kind of construction equipment. It's making too much noise. It's messing up my sleep. Because, of course, because they had the luxury of having the pit fire and everything the night before, they didn't go to sleep till 4 a.m. anyway. And so now that the rest of the world is in operation and these people are trying to fix what's theirs on Yard B, people in Yard A got an attitude. They feel inconvenienced. So now they want, now here's what you call punitive entitlement or punitive authority, either or, where now because a group is being inconvenienced, specifically the people in Yard A, until they get their way, the people in Yard B will suffer more. So they'll call the police. They'll get all of that shut down, noise violation with the ordinances that exist there. Ridiculous. So no, you gonna have to, you can't do that yard until we say you can, when we're ready to wake up, because we don't want to wake up the baby. So that's the second group of people and how they respond to race. Then we get to what you call that third group. This is the group that I call the group on the hill. All right. So we've talked about the first two groups. The first group is that small collective of white people who get it. They understand that there's problems in America, and sometimes they even fight to change it. Those are like the Jane Elliots and some of them. They will challenge the status quo. Now I do feel some kind of way because they be making a profit off of it, and I'm like, money off black oppression. Okay, I see you. And then there's group two. All right, that was the Yard A folks. All right, they knew they started the fire. They watched it blow up and everything, and they tried to ignore it, but the wall wasn't tall enough to stop the smoke and the ash, and they're annoyed, right? Then there's what I call the third group, the folks on the hill. And these are the folks where, real talk, I don't even get disappointed with them because I already know where they stand. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. These are the white Americans who are racist and don't care. Or they will be racist and hide behind the idea of being patriotic. They'll find any kind of reason to, tie racism into some kind of shielded patriotic symbolism. And that's what it's really about all the time. That's the group. There's no shock for me. I expect you to act a certain way in that realm. And so I want to introduce to you an individual named Harry R. Truman. Not Harry S. Truman, the president, but Harry R. Truman. So let's go back in history, and this is going to be a quick little science lesson at the same time. So Harry R. Truman lived on Mount St. Helens. And this is a real person, by the way. So he lived on Mount St. Helens. He had a special little lodge on the mountain and everything like that. So we know that Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980, May 18th of 1980, right? However, before the eruption, there were signs that mountain was going to blow for at least 2 months. And they kept warning people to get out. And there were tons of people who lived on the mountain or really close or lived in the areas where most likely the pyroclastic flow would hit. And they were told, please get out because there will be no way to escape. And it's, I lived on this mountain for 50 years. I'm not getting off this thing up. And I'm like, yeah, well, one, Mount St. Helens is a composite volcano, so they don't erupt every 50 years anyway. So you wouldn't have been around to see it. So, of course, you might want to take note. Kind of like even in response to this current pandemic, I'm like, because people are like, oh, it's not a big deal. I'm like, no, it's been 100 years. It's been 100 years since Spanish flu. So it's about time for another 100-year pandemic. But anyway, so these are the people that are on the mountain. They don't want to get off, right? So Harry R. Truman would not get off of this mountain. And each day things got worse. From March going into April, there was an increase in earthquakes and seismic activity. And the earthquakes kept getting bigger and bigger. And if you've ever studied anything in regards to seismic activity, earthquakes can trigger a volcanic eruption, right? And so at this point, there's smaller earthquakes, like 2.6s, 2.8s, 2.9s, and stuff like that. And so he's like, I'm not moving. I am not moving off this mountain. He starts to get notoriety and become famous in the town, and a lot of people start to support him. Yeah, he's doing it. That's right. And even then, like, people started paying and going to the lodge just to support him. So now they're on the mountain too. They're gonna stay on it too. Yeah, I mean, we come up here just to see the birds and to see the hawks and see the crows. We just gonna go and stay out here. It's a good time. And so he refuses to get off this mountain, right? Some more things happen. We're getting into April. Mount St. Helens creates a second crater. If you know what a crater is, that's just where all the comes out of, all right? So Mount St. Helens creates a second crater, and it's growing feet by the day, like to the point where it grows by like 1,500 feet in a matter of weeks, right? That's some huge kind of unnatural seismic activity right there. That's your warning sign. If you've ever seen something like Dante's Peak, that was your sign to get out. And so again, I'm not going anywhere. And mind you, he was 80 years old. And he also said that he had built a bunker. And in the bunker, he had liquor and food. So he'd be okay even if it did erupt. And I'm like, yeah, if you think something man-made can withstand the pyroclastic flow from a freaking mountain, good luck. So he's still not moving, right? And so the second crater keeps growing and everything. And then it kind of merges into the original crater. And at the same time, Mount St. Helens is starting to bulge out of the side. Like there's a mass that's starting to bulge out of the side. And what that is it's just the pressure and everything else building up in the mountain because it's going to erupt at some point. So then there starts to be these small little tiny eruptions out of the two craters. Now this is before the big eruption. And these eruptions have a lot of gas. You see a lot of blue flames, stuff that's very unnatural to that region at the time, and it creates a lot of lightning and thunderstorms. Now, if you've ever lived in the Pacific Northwest, specifically Washington State, Oregon, maybe even Idaho, there's not a lot of electric activity when you're talking about lightning storms and thunder. It's rare. It doesn't happen a lot, specifically when you're talking about like the Puget Sound region of Washington State or the western portion of Oregon. It's a little bit different as you go further east, but there's not a lot of lightning. It's rare. But at this point in time, it was happening every night, every day. And so they keep saying, please Get out. Nope, I'm not getting off. Y'all trying to take my business away from me. And of course, people are starting to support and everything else like that. Now, at this point, some of the people who have been getting reservations at the lodge are a little nervous. Like, actually, you know what? We're going to just go ahead and go. That earthquake this morning did a number on us. We're going to go ahead and pull out. But best wishes. And so fast forward to May, right? So there's been earthquakes. There's been a second crater that's been created on the mountain. The side of the mountain is bulging out. And with that bulge, it's saying that, hey, because of the pressure that is building in this mountain, it's probably not going to blow out of the top. It might shoot out of the side. Harry, I just want you to know that if it blows out of the side, you are in the direct path of the pyroclastic flow. If you don't know what a pyroclastic flow is, it's just the hot ash that comes out of the mountain. And it destroys everything in sight. No ifs, ands, but you can't make it out of it. If you're in the way, just say your prayer. It is what it is. You'll be vaporized like that. And so he's still not moving. Nope, I'm not doing it. So then comes May 17th. It is the last, straw. People keep going to the mountain trying to convince him to get off because most of the people on this mountain have gotten off. There's a few other people who still won't leave, or even people who are in the path who will not leave. And so Harry is like, no, I'm not doing it. Just going off about it all. And the worst part was every time people went to this mountain to try to get him, they were putting themselves in danger because nobody knew when the mountain was going to erupt, but they knew it was going to be soon. So boom comes May 18th. And what do you think happened to Harry? Harry died on that hill. All right. He was vaporized, most likely. Like, they think that he might have went into shock right away and died before he could even feel any pain. But pretty much he was vaporized. There was no body found. The body was found, but he was buried under 150 feet of ash. Burning ash on top of that. So there wasn't a lot of body left to find. I don't know what they found. Maybe they might have found a toenail or something. But literally, he was willing to die on that hill. And I think that's representative of what you see with a lot of white Americans who they know that the country's racist and they don't care. They're willing to die by that same standard because, one, it means they get a piece of something. And usually these are the people who really don't have anything to begin with. And because they feel that they've been given a cold shoulder by the United States because they were promised the American dream and they didn't get it, they have all kind of rage they're sitting on, especially if they see somebody black or they see somebody else who is not white that they believe has more than them. These are the groups of people where, again, going and killing an unarmed black man will not make their life better, but it just makes them feel empowered. Because, again, it's a conversation about the fear and the idea of losing power. So for a lot of Americans who in this country are powerless, the one thing that they think they do have in regards to power is the power of being white. And so they'll hold on to that and they'll do racist things, and they recognize that even if they're not wealthy, even if they're not the top tier anything, or even if their life is not where they want it to be, they know that whiteness will protect them. That's why you can have a father and son and the friend go and chase down a random black person and kill him, record it, and then recognize that most likely nothing's going to happen because, of course, the father was also a former police officer. And the policing system in this country is like a good old boy buddy system. So lots of people get to skate by all the time. And so literally, that's what you see with all of it. And I'm like, it's just the craziest thing. And so I hate the fact that, because I have not watched the full video. I saw it scrolling on my timeline, and when I realized what was about to happen, I didn't watch. Because after a while, it becomes traumatic to keep seeing so many images. And I think that's another experience a lot of white Americans will never understand. As a black person in this country, you're constantly bombarded with images of people who look like you being victims of racist attacks. And a lot of the times, when you're talking about people who are really just minding their business, and they get shot and killed, the Philando cast still has to be the worst one to me. The fact that you killed somebody in front of his child. And there's no remorse. There's no remorse. There's no empathy. There's no anything because, again, in this country, black people don't have the luxury of innocence. They're already assumed to be guilty. So it doesn't matter how terrible the action is that happens to that black person. White America is always going to say, there's some kind of justification behind it. There's some reason why it's justified. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? But they will never hold themselves to the same standard because they recognize that the power in whiteness exists within their realm of their experience. And they know that they're protected by certain things. And yes, they can do a little bit more than the next person. And even if society sucks, even if they're at the bottom tier of the economic bubble in this country, even if other groups of people are above them financially, because America's all about money, money, money. It's all we ever talk about. For them, it's at least we're not black. We're still white. We at least have that to hold on to. And people will latch onto that. And so anytime that I guess that element of whiteness is challenged, that status quo is challenged, they're willing to fight for it. They will do anything and everything in their power to do whatever they need to do to send a message. And I think a lot of times with some of these killings, there's a message that's being sent out there. And so that's really all I got to say. I pray that justice is served. But again, I don't even get excited. When they said that the father and the son got arrested, I didn't even get excited because, again, we've seen many people get arrested and still get sent home. We've seen many people get arrested and there's a mistrial or they're found not guilty. Or even if they're convicted, the sentence is some BS. You know, they get a slap on the wrist. Oh, okay. Boys will be boys. So here's 20 years of probation. You know, you cut somebody's head off. Here's 20 years of probation. You know, actually, you should run for office. You might just be elected as, county sheriff. Go ahead and run. We'll support you. Because that's the other thing. You see the support groups. There's all kind of groups raising money for the father and the son that killed. I forgot their names. That's why I keep saying father and son, but I'll post it on here. There's all kind of groups raising money for them. So even with the facts being presented and the video evidence that's literally right there, they do not care. That's that third group. Don't matter. And again, they will protect what they know is what they see is, they will protect what they believe is their power. And so, yeah, they'll donate money to it. Yeah, we'll give some money for the defense fund. Yeah, That's how somebody like George Zimmerman has been able to still stay afloat. He gets so much in donations from racist white people. I'm just like, this country is such trash sometimes, I swear. And again, I think with that third group, because again, a lot of them feel that they have lost everything. Some of them are only holding on to symbolism. And that symbolism to me is patriotism. That's why they get excited when you see the little blue angels fly over the sky. Stuff like that tickles them because it doesn't equate to anything tangible. But it gives them the hope that, hey, I just might be able to get what I see, some of these wealthy people get. And I still might have access to that American dream. But I guess I need to, pretty much oppress other people a little bit more so I can get closer to it. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Share yours. I'm out. Subscribe.